So we've had you on the show. We talked quite a bit about Machado, the opposition leader, Nobel Prize winner, also a Trump supporter. I think a lot of people spent the weekend learning about Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, sometimes called, a hardline socialist, other times called a pragmatist. I want to ask you, what does it mean to have her, quote unquote, running the country right now and issuing statements first against the capture of Maduro and now saying she's willing to work with the U.S.?
Well, President Trump has made two critical decisions. One was first taking out Nicolas Maduro. The second was deciding what he was going to do post-Maduro. And it surprised a lot of people that he did not install Maria Corina Machado or any of the members of the opposition living in exile, and instead went with this more, let's call it a more pragmatic route, to work with Delcy Rodriguez, clearly looking for stability in a post-Maduro country, to try to affect some of the changes that they'd like to see in Venezuela. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was on all the Sunday shows yesterday, and at one point said that at some point they will talk about a transition to democracy, but not right now.
Yeah, a number of articles over the weekend highlighting that this administration is looking for stability over democracy, at least right now in the near term. I want to talk to you about the stability of Venezuela and what that could potentially mean for companies coming back. We're going to talk a lot more about the oil market, but just in general, this switch to Delcy Rodriguez, at least in the short term, does that stabilize things? Does it stabilize things not only with the economy, but also the military there?
Well, it certainly has someone in place who knows the country very well, who knows all of the players. She appears to have consolidated power. We have to see if that remains true. She's known to be a pragmatist. She's known to be someone who said when they had imposed price controls that was leading to scarcity, and she convinced the country to change that path. So I think that she's somebody that is seen as a person that the government can work with, that oil companies can work with, if they are convinced that there's a framework in place that protects their investments.
All right, MCC, please stay with us. I want to bring in another voice right now. I want to bring in Professor Alejandro Velasco from NYU. Professor, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
I want to begin with the same question I was just asking Michelle. Exactly what does it mean, in your opinion, to have Delcy Rodriguez temporarily in control of the country and also issuing some different statements? First, opposing the capture of Maduro and now saying she's willing to work with the U.S. What does that mean, at least in the near term, for the stability of Venezuela and also the ability of companies to come in there?
Well, I think what it means is that Delcy Rodriguez and her inner circle have a really difficult line to navigate right now. On the one hand, they do have to discursively give the appearance, as has been the case for the past 25 years in Venezuela, of mounting an anti-imperialist campaign, of being the standard bearers against the United States, but in practice, having in fact to do the United States bidding, especially as it comes to oil. It is in fact true, as we just heard, that she has a reputation beyond her public statements of actually imposing or trying to impose in the government some more realist, pragmatic policies, especially when it comes to the economy. But the reality is that their hands are completely tied. They have an armada right off the coast, and they have the looming threat of additional intervention if they don't do what the United States says.
Okay. Here in the U.S., lower oil prices are going to be applauded by a lot of people. The idea of getting more oil out of Venezuela, is that something that she can get the people behind if the U.S. is involved and U.S. companies are involved? Are there political ramifications of this cooperation for her and her ability to keep a peaceful transition, if you will?
I mean, the reality is that Venezuela's economy is in shambles and has been for a long time. We've seen some modest signs of recovery over the past 2 to 3 years, but they have been recovery from ground zero. And so I think for most Venezuelans, the primary concern is, are our lives going to be materially improved day to day, right? Whether it happens with significant U.S. involvement or not, that's a different story. The issue again is that they've made so much over the past 25 years of resisting U.S. as an empire, that now they're going to have to kind of backtrack on that. And whether they can sell the Venezuelan people, at least their supporters, which are dwindling, but still there, will be a big question.
All right, Michelle, I want to come back to you. You mentioned that Delcy Rodriguez has consolidated power. According to all reports that we read, it's her and her brother. They both consolidated power in that country and allegedly helped Maduro win an election that a lot of people believe that he didn't actually win. They also reportedly get a lot of support from Colombia and both Cuba. So as we go forward, how does the U.S. navigate this situation if, in fact, they are getting that support from Colombia and Cuba, and just the politics of this?
Yeah, well, Colombia and Cuba aren't going to be able to do a lot for them, considering the armada that we've talked about, which is off the coast, and the threat of force. I think the big question is, Marco Rubio said over and over again that they want the oil money to go to the people. And what's it been doing up until now? It's been going to the oligarchs. It's been going to the generals. Will the military be satisfied if they cannot have the money that has kept them in power and happy? If they have to give that money, if that money is no longer theirs to have, do they continue to support Delcy Rodriguez? What happens when the distribution of money, if and when it comes, goes in a different path? That's what we really have to see. I think that's the breaking point.
Michelle, I also want to ask you another question just about the attractiveness of this Venezuelan oil. Ben Emmons from FedWatch, Freaking West on the show, he put out a note saying the fact that about 2/3 of that production in Venezuela is heavy crude, it's a bit more profitable. And even though there's not a lot of demand for oil, in fact, we have oversupply right now, this might lead to U.S. companies coming in. So in this situation, is it about volatility or potential profitability?
Oh, I think it's about profitability. I mean, extracting oil in Venezuela is somewhere between $13 and $16 per barrel, and compare that to between 40 and 60 in the United States. It can be profitable once you put in a lot of investment to make up for the fact that the infrastructure is dilapidated. It hasn't been invested in 26 years. So they have infrastructure in place that needs to be replaced. But once you can extract oil, it can absolutely be profitable, and the refineries in the United States can process that heavy oil very easily. They have for years. We used to be the primary receiver of Venezuelan oil, many years ago.
Professor, I want to give you the last word. Double-sided question. Is this a win, at least in the near term, for the Venezuelan people? And is this a potential win for people, or companies, I should say, that want to invest in Venezuela?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, projecting to the future. I do think it's a win insofar as at the very least it releases some of the tension that had been mounting over the past 4 months. Obviously, anxiety remains. The question of what happens next remains. But in terms of Maduro being out, that does seem to create other opportunities internally for the government to operate differently. In terms of U.S. oil companies, absolutely. If in fact this threat of additional intervention is real, they will have a lot more leeway, especially if they have a willing partner, as seems to be the case in Delcy Rodriguez and her inner circle.